This is Detroit's Morning Answer with John Anthony on FM 92.7 and AM 1400. The Answer.
The people, United States, listen to me. War of Caribbean, war South America. No. Peace. Yes. Y es una tarea que les doy desde aquí a todas las fuerzas populares, sociales, políticas, militares, policiales, a todas las fuerzas de la patria, a no caer en provocaciones en ningún momento, pero a movilizarse con fervor patriótico para decirle: fuera de aquí, barcos imperialistas, fuera de aquí, amenazas militares. Venezuela se respeta.
Basically what he's saying, Maduro, America, don't try to come to war with us. Michael Pack is one of the rare storytellers who does not just document history. He sits inside the heartbeat of it. As president of Manifold Productions and Palladium, I hope I'm saying that name right, Pictures, he has spent decades producing and directing some of the most important documentary films in America. His body of work includes nationally broadcast films, award-winning investigative pieces, and deep dives into geopolitical conflicts that shape our world. His storytelling is meticulous. His narratives are anchored in truth. His work reminds viewers that real events carry real consequences. This week, the United States made news in the Eastern Pacific. A lethal maritime operation conducted in international waters targeted a vessel linked to a designated terrorist organization. 3 suspected narco-terrorists were killed, bringing the total killed in his own campaign to 82. Wow. The operation is part of a larger strategy that includes robotics, long-dwell maritime assets, and expanded interdiction authority. Michael Pack, welcome back to Detroit's Morning Answer.
Thank you. Good to be back.
You know, Michael, there was an article in Fox News. The article describes a United States maritime interdiction force operating in international waters targeting a vessel tied to a designated terrorist organization. When you watch this unfold as a filmmaker, what is the first narrative layer you see that most analysts miss?
Well, as you know, I just finished or was just broadcast a documentary we did on the biggest battles in Iraq, Fallujah and Najaf, called The Last 600 Meters. It was on PBS just before Veterans Day and now streaming on Amazon. And the Iraq War reminds you that you can go at a plan like a war on terror. You can quickly be enmeshed in kind of that sort of urban combat that is a meat grinder and a morass and very hard to get out of. So I worry that could happen with the war on drugs as conducted by Donald Trump. I mean, on the other hand, I'm a strong supporter of the president, and I like to say that he has gotten the nation's attention on the fentanyl crisis in a way that no other political figure ever has. And it is a huge tragedy for America. On the other hand, I'm not sure that shooting down drug boats is going to be the end of it. I mean, pretty soon you have to deal with, Mexico, and behind Mexico you have to deal with China. And where will it end?
Right.
So I am worried about that.
Now, I will tell you, the Sinaloa cartel said that Trump is hurting their operations. Here they are.
I do, but I have what I have to do.
Why do you say you do what you have to do? Couldn't you stop doing this?
No puedo.
You can't.
Ya cuando entras, ya no sales a muchas veces.
Once you get in, you can't get out. Do you think what President Trump has been doing has been making your job tougher?
Oh, yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
But it's becoming more difficult, you think?
Yeah.
In a bizarre interview.
When you hear that from an individual from the Sinaloa cartel saying that what Trump is doing is interfering with their operations, I'm as somebody who's former law enforcement, I get concerned about President Trump's safety because, to your point, not only is China upset, but a lot of these different narco organizations. Do you think they'll come after President Trump?
I'm sure they will. That's a very good. It is an important risk. But what's the next step in the war against narco-terrorism? I mean, it'll be logical to go after fabrication sites where they're refining this and storing drugs inland, so there'll be drone hits inland. I mean, I'm not sure what the law. Well, I think it would be good to have a long-term plan. I mean, that's what we lacked in Iraq. I mean, we went in there with one purpose and it changed. It would be good to lay out exactly where it's going.
Well, President Trump was asked that question, I believe it was on yesterday, about striking inside Mexico or Colombia. Here's what he said.
Are you planning on also potentially launching strikes in Mexico or putting American troops or American personnel into Mexico to deal with it?
Would I launch strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? It's okay with me. I've been speaking to Mexico. They know how I stand. We're losing hundreds of thousands of people to drugs. So now we've stopped the waterways, but we know every route. We know every route. We know the addresses of every drug lord. We know their address. We know their front door. We know everything about every one of them. They're killing our people. That's like a war. Would I do it? I'd be proud to. I'd probably go into Congress and say, hey, and you know what? The Democrats and the Republicans would both agree, unless they're crazy.
Michael, you agree with President Trump's? I'm glad he said he'd go to Congress first, though.
Indeed, I heard that too at the end. If he goes to Congress, then that's a different story. That's right. I had never heard him say that before. Until you played that clip. Yeah. That is a good thing. And of course, the logic of it, and President Trump is very logical, is you have to go inland, you have to kill the head of the snake. You've got to go deal with China. But and so that's his instincts. But it would be good for Pete Hegseth or somebody to lay out, what is the long-term prospect. Yeah. Clearly, President Trump is right. All those things are on the table. They're the logical next step. But I'd still like to see it all laid out.
Michael, one of the things I love storytellers. I love people who can take complex and make it simple. Now, you spent years documenting conflict at the human level. Let's say you were creating a documentary sequence around this operation. What would be your opening shot?
I think when you make films, the best elements are sex and violence. Sad to say, I think I have to start with one of these operations. I would try really hard to get an inside track and try to get one of these operations in process and see what's actually happening on the ground to these narco-terrorists. And I try to get an interview like the one you just played. I mean, I think that's where you have to start. I think it's important, as President Trump did just in that brief talk, to sort of lay out why this is happening and what the tragedy for America is. Yeah. Without that context, it doesn't make sense. And the scale of the tragedy for a lot of us is easy to put out of our mind. It is, as I said earlier, a great thing about Donald Trump that he has not put it out of his mind. It's really decimating, a huge part of a generation of young and not so young people. And
Michael,
but I'd start with the attacks.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you why I agree with President Trump. When I was a legislator, we did this bill called House Bill 1. We looked into the crisis that was happening in the state of Illinois. We traveled literally across the entire state of Illinois, hearing story after story after story. And when I was a police officer, I was dealing with heroin overdoses. I'm telling you, I don't think the American people truly understand just how bad the drug crisis is in our country, because people really don't, unless you've been affected personally. It's one of those things. Well, it's not happening to me or nobody I know, so it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. So, how would you paint that picture for the American people? You heard what President Trump said. We know where you live. We know everything about you. How would you paint that, just the dire strait of crises that we are in as it relates to fentanyl now, killing so many of our people?
That's a very good point. My oldest son is a MPD, DC police officer, reserve police officer. So I've heard those stories from him too. But yeah, it's very hard for filmmakers to present the scale of a crisis. You're stuck looking at one or two cases that are illustrative. But what is significant, as you said, you get it by traveling around a state, is the dimensions of this crisis. And that's hard to communicate in film. And mere statistics, statistics don't really move people's hearts. You're really right to focus on the power of stories.
Yeah.
It would really be a challenge to make that vivid. But I think it's essential in this kind of a film.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a big division in the country between people who have been personally affected and people who are able to sort of put it out of their mind, and that would be a challenge to making this film.
I personally know police officers who have died from exposure to fentanyl. They went in and didn't realize that there was so much fentanyl, and one guy opened a bag and it just hit him, and he just keeled over.
Jeez.
I mean, I'm telling you, I can tell you story after story of just how many young people. There was a 12-year-old kid that died somewhere, I believe it was Southern Illinois, who was exposed to fentanyl. I mean, this is a scourge on our nation, and that's why people say, "Well, John, why are you so behind President Trump on the strikes?" If it's not getting here, that means more kids are being able to live to see another day. And I'm telling you, that's why I appreciate your perspective on this, Michael Pack. Because and I really do hope one day you think about doing something, because I've seen your documentaries and because I just saw the last 600 meters on Prime, because you have a unique way of laying out a story. It's not biased, it's just the truth. Why are we missing the truth in filmmaking today?
Well, I think in my area of documentary films that one problem that we have, which you have in a lot of media, less so actually radio, but surely in documentaries and movies and streaming, that so many filmmakers have a left-wing progressive bias that they tell only one side of the story. So the other side of the story is often missing. And we at our company, Palladium Pictures, are trying to redress this by having a training program for young right-of-center, or as my son who runs it likes to say, non-woke filmmakers. So anyone out there knows a young filmmaker, they should apply at the PalladiumPictures.com. But I really think the bias in my category of documentary filmmakers explains why only half the story is often told.
Yeah. And, I'm now understanding the filmmaking industry in a way that I never knew. My book, Letters to John Boy, is getting ready to become a movie. It's a story about my son's suicide and how from the moment he was born up until the time he died, and the after effects, because just like heroin, just like these drugs, once that child is gone, man, it leaves the hole that it leaves in the hearts of the people who once had this young, bright child is now gone. It hurts, Michael. And I'm learning stuff about filmmaking that I just simply did not know, and just the money behind it. Because we're doing this. This is one of those, I don't know what you call it, but we're doing this. We've already got distribution for it and everything, either the Netflix, Prime, and we also have already in place of theaters. It's going to be in theaters and everything. So I'm really excited. Why didn't you tell me last time I talked to you that filmmaking was this hard?
I don't know. I wanted to get you in. I wanted to suck you in, I guess. But that's great, and it's great that you're doing it. And of course, you have to relive the experience. That's particularly hard for you.
Yeah.
But that's an important story to tell. I'm really glad that you're telling it. I hope it gets a huge audience.
Now, Michael, you said if people have ideas about documentaries, they can reach out to you. How can people reach out if they want to become a part, if they want to become investors? How can they join what you're doing at your film company?
Well, they can go to our website and contact us, PalladiumPictures.com. And then, as I say, if you know a kind of young or mid-career filmmaker who wants to make a short documentary and pitch us an idea, they can go to our incubator program, which is at PalladiumPictures.com incubator. It's just a button right there, and apply. But they can also just reach out at admin1 at PalladiumPictures.com. My X account is Michael Pack _ but it's better to reach us through the website.
Yeah, it looks like X is down right now. So, it looks
Really?
like,
Wow.
Yeah, Cloudflare is down. So it looks like, I don't know if there was a attack or anything, but it's just, I just went online and said X is down because of Cloudflare.
Wow.
So Michael
Wow.
Pack, producer and director of The Last 600 Meter, president of Manifold Productions, Inc., and Palladium Pictures. Thank you so much for joining us today on Detroit's Morning Answer. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back on.
Hey.
My pleasure.
No problem. Detroit's Morning Answer. We'll be right back.